Major support for these broadcasts is provided by the CUNY TV Foundation, New York Community Bank, Chase Commercial Term Lending, Chelsea Lighting, Capital One Bank, Genova Burns, Giantomasi and Webster, Kilroy Architectural Windows, New York's Window Company, the Witkoff Group, Greenberg Traurig, M&T Bank, Perfect Building Maintenance. Additional support is provided by Ackman Ziff Real Estate Group, Bank of America Merrill Lynch, Briarwood Organization, C.B. Richard Ellis, Colliers International New York, Cushman and Wakefield, Dime Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Douglaston Development, Levine Builders, DDG, Friedman LLP, Accountants and Advisors, Flushing Bank, Herrick Feinstein LLP, Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Center at Syracuse University, James Orphanides, Centurion Holdings, John Katsimatidis, Red Apple Group, Corman Communities, a.k.a. Hotels, Madison Realty Capital, Margolin Weiner and Evans, LLP, Certified Public Accountants and Business Advisors, Massey Knackle Realty Services, New Banks, Meridian Capital Group, Newmark Grubb Knight Frank, Popular Community Bank, Sterling & Sterling, SJP Properties, Stonehenge Partners, Urban American, and These Friends.
Everybody wants to go shopping. Everybody's going shopping in New York, around the country, but they want to go to retailers, and they're trying to find these unique shopping centers where they can, 1 level, 2 levels, 3 levels, movie theaters, restaurants, everything. So we have assembled today the guys who own and develop retail facilities, as well as one of the premier brokers on the market to provide their insight on what's happening in retail. My guests, they include Chris Conlon, who is the Executive Vice President and COO of Acadia Realty Trust, Richard Wagman, who is the founder and managing partner at Madison Capital, Jeff Roseman, who is the Executive Vice President at Newmark Grubb Knight Frank, and last but never least, my friend Lester Petracca, who is the Chairman and CEO of Triangle Equities. So we have, a group, with the exception of the good-looking guy in the corner over there. We have owner-operators of retail shopping centers who like urban retail. You recently have bought a portfolio of locations. Are you becoming a banker?
That's right. Banker? That's right. That's our new.
Lester is in Brooklyn. Lester, the only borough that he hasn't really gone into is Manhattan. He's done everything else, and he's the king of Brooklyn and other parts. And you are building a very unique and large facility in downtown Brooklyn.
We are.
So how do you feel, how's the retail market in New York and the tri-state region? Mr. Wagman, since you just spent a lot of your money.
From our perspective, New York's very strong, obviously. You have a lot of retailers that want to be here. We really are on top and following each one of the interesting, dynamic retailers that are out in the market that really just want to be in New York. And they don't want to be in one location. They don't want to be in two. They'll go to 3 to 5 locations if you've got the right spot.
So I think that's a great point. Who are the retailers, who are looking at your locations and your locations, who want to have this volume of not being one location to make a presence over here? And I'm not talking about the five burgers, over in that market. Who are the retailers?
I think you got to direct attention back to Jeff.
He'll get his time.
It's Jeff's world. I mean, the good thing about Jeff and his fine colleagues is they make it their business every morning when they wake up. Without their input, we can only be so
in the city. Certainly, what the most recent phenomenon has been the international retailers that have been coming in, from London, whether it's Topshop or Ted Baker, or from Spain, Zara and all. Inditex, made one of the largest deals on Fifth Avenue at 666 when they bought their retail condo. You've got, Uniqlo. You've got A couple companies from Russia are coming in.
But
So
when you bring that point up of Uniqlo, I hadn't been to Uniqlo until about a week ago. I couldn't believe the store and the merchandising and the price point and everything, But you need a huge facility. I mean, that store is probably 60, 70,000 square
about
feet.
100,000 feet.
Okay, so you have 100,000 square feet. There aren't that many. There is a great location in Brooklyn for 100,000
Right.
square feet. And maybe if they wanted to go to Staten Island, they could be 100,000 square feet.
Right. It's next to impossible to assemble that kind of footage in New York. And when you do, the rents are
But
prohibitive.
here's the interesting point. We talk about, and maybe Richard brought it up, people are talking about maybe Manhattan for these national retailers. How many of these national retailers, Armani Exchange, which is, going into your Brooklyn property, how many of these national retailers are going to say, I really want to go to Queens, or I want to go to Staten Island, or I want to go to the Bronx?
So I think H&M is a great example, right? So H&M came in, they poked around, did a couple deals in Manhattan, got their feet wet, and then they went out to Queens. They were under construction on Fulton Street in Brooklyn. They've gone out to the suburbs and the great malls throughout the country. You're going to see that with Joe Fresh very soon. Joe Fresh opened up a few stores here in town. Joe Fresh is going to open up almost 700 units inside JCPenney stores around the country in March. You can see the same thing with Zara. Zara poked around here, and now they're on all the great high streets. So I think that you'll see that continue, and I think you'll see Uniqlo's already made an announcement where they're going to have 200 stores in the country in the next X number of years. Not that many years.
Music to Lester's ears will be retailers no longer look at the boroughs as sort of second tier anymore. I mean, retailers are looking at Brooklyn, they're looking at Queens almost as an...
Remember, I'm a Brooklyn boy. Well, I still talk about Brooklyn.
And Chris will remember, years ago, convincing retailers to get
struggle to
out
get 'em to
to
go
the
to Fulton
boroughs was sort of why. And now
Now,
that's...
you're building in Staten Island. Who's looking to talk to you about Staten Island?
There are a bunch of people that are talking to us about Staten Island. Staten Island doesn't have that much retail. It has a hospitality component and also a residential tower component. But retail in the outer boroughs historically and still is under-retailed, substantially under-retailed. And you hit on the point earlier is the problem is to the prototypical is finding the space to put them into a store that they can function and operate properly.
Chris was saying before we were talking about the Flatbush Avenue corridor, because he's going to have this great mixed-use facility, on Flatbush Avenue
And Fulton Street.
Fulton Street. Then the second section of the area would be Atlantic Terminal, perhaps.
A little bit further south. I think it's by Lester's project.
The Lester goes
Tilden
next to Tilden, which is the hub. And then the third location is Kings Plaza.
To the south.
To the south.
Yeah, even further.
And now, Kings Plaza is probably the place, which was recently sold, one of the highest sales per last year, $710 million, is a place where a Uniqlo could go, or another Zara or something like that. But do you see any of these retailers, these major retailers, going to a standalone section, perhaps in the Queens?
We do. We just acquired a portfolio that included 2 assets, one in Queens, another in Brooklyn on Montague Street. We couldn't be more excited about what's going on in Brooklyn. We think that there are a lot of these interesting retailers that just want to be there. They really do, and they are willing to be, the smartest retailers are willing to be creative with their space. So they're willing to take smaller ground floor units, they're willing to go to second floor, basement. You have to be creative if you're going to be able to expand in New York City.
I think a great current example of that, growth outside of Manhattan is downtown Brooklyn. So selfishly, I'll talk about downtown Brooklyn and Fulton Street because we are developing 600,000 feet of retail there. But on Fulton Street in general, the transformation that's going on right now on Fulton Street is extraordinary. So 5 years ago, Jeff or I would have gone there and we would have seen a We Buy Gold store and a sneaker store and a lot of dollar type discounters.
The interesting, all the people who own those stores are the guys who own the retail in Fulton.
So patiently and slowly, and now it's really accelerating through, you're seeing H&M is under construction, Gap opened, Shake Shack has, I think, their second most productive store in the chain is on Fulton Street in Brooklyn. Swarovski has a signed lease. Armani Exchange opened. Express opened.
Century
Aldo
21 is going to go
opened.
there. and
We've
you're
announced Century 21 in our project. Alamo Draft House has been announced in our project. We'll make another announcement in the next 30 days about our project. Nordstrom Rack has a signed lease on Fulton Street, as does TJ Maxx, as does Sephora. So those names, would we have been having this conversation 5 years ago, 3 years ago? It's
Yeah,
remarkable.
but you know what? Let's look at Harlem. I remember H&M opened up in Harlem. You know, everything took place, you know, after they grid Harlem City, Harlem, USA. But I haven't seen those stores continuing or new opening up. Now, I will say East River Plaza has done well. I think it's doing better. They also opened up, you know, their first Aldi over there, and they just opened up another Applebee over there. But that section of Manhattan hasn't really
Well,
done
I
that.
think part of the reason was assembling larger space, but recently there was an announcement that Whole Foods signed a lease at 125th Street. I mean, they're a game changer, and they will.
Yeah, you know, you bring up a great comment about Whole Foods. In reality, I don't know how much space, and I don't know if but your center in downtown Brooklyn, there is a real need for a supermarket, and there isn't. You know, you have a Trader Joe's, which does not too far away from you on Montague Street, which does really well, but downtown Brooklyn has over 2,500 apartments, you know, rental apartments, and these people, you know, would be great. They would love to have a quality of a Whole Foods.
We are in discussions with a number of different market operators, and that use in some form will show up at City Point. I don't know
There's
what
still
that
not an Apple store in Brooklyn.
There's no Apple store for 2.8 million people in Brooklyn.
Yeah, I don't understand
That's
that at all.
remarkable.
Why not?
Don't ask Marty Markowitz.
No. Marty, no,
he's
but
the
why?
big proponent, right?
Why isn't there? Maybe they could be at 181 Montague Street, but I mean, why?
We'll take them. We will happily
Think
take
you
them.
would-
How's that?
Even though they want a concession on their rent,
We're still okay with that.
you'll take them over
We
there.
will take them.
Yeah, you know, we were talking prior to the show about vertical retailing. Okay, since I'm a little older, no, Lester's older than me. Now, but all joking aside, that's not true.
What do you mean a little older? Significantly older.
This is the last time you'll be on this. Okay, you know, vertical retail has changed. How has that changed? What, you know, and we were talking about the building that Metlife used to own, where Corvettes used to be. You know, that you too young.
Too young.
On 48th Street and Fifth Avenue, where they converted. Why is vertical retailing doing better today?
I think it's simply that the retailers have come to grips with they're not getting the prototypical space.
That's right.
And they see the sales volume that they do. Again, if you look at all the boroughs, they're so under-retailed per capita relative to the rest of the country, and you look at the demographics and the numbers. For example, Target, the first time they looked at our site in Brooklyn, said, yeah, when pigs fly, and then proceeded to go on the second and third floor and built, at that point, the most expensive store in the country. So they start to realize the numbers that they can do in the outer boroughs of New York.
And again, if you're going to be a successful retailer, you've got to be creative to get into this market.
Right.
To Jeffrey's point, if you're going to have a 50, 75, or 100,000 square foot store, you're just not going to get that on the ground floor. There are very few spots that you could do that.
You know, and as a corollary to that, you know, the greatest retailers in the country today are looking at the urban markets, and they're modifying their programs. They're coming up with alternative concepts. You know, Target has a division now where they've opened up in LA and Seattle and San Francisco and Chicago called it's called City Target. And the Target sales floor is about 90 to 100,000 square feet as opposed to 130,000 square feet, and it's an urban concept. Walgreens has opened up 2 in Chicago, 1 in Boston, and I think they're working on 1 in here in New York, with their 2-level 20 to 30,000 square foot stores for the urban market. So
we happen to have one of the best owners of retail, besides the three of you here, who happens to have a great location on Broadway. And I mean, it was a good border store, and he took it over. And I walked in there, I was down at the floor of the Exchange for an event, and I couldn't believe it. The downstairs, you know, you have this yogurt, you have everything else, and this is a great 2-story location.
They did a beautiful job. They converted. What we did is we leased the retail at 100 Broadway to Dwayne Reed. They took a historic bank branch, which was the Bank of Tokyo, and they kept all of the historic aspects of the store and built really an amazing store with doing very good sales per square foot, and it's about being a smart retailer.
I have a question. What do you think about, today, the medical business, and I did this on one of my shows, a double show on the Stoller Report about healthcare. Today, hospitals get rid of patients in 24 hours. And, some of them are utilizing the off-clinic sites, okay, some of the hospitals' own sites. Mount Sinai is a major owner of these sites. Have you seen more in the suburban as opposed to the Manhattan location, more people saying to you, looking at healthcare, medical?
So we have a significant suburban portfolio in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and elsewhere throughout the country. And we think the answer is yes, we see the demand from the healthcare sector. And the better part of the answer, or the more complete part of the answer, is that we think that they're great co-tenants. Not every retailer agrees, because it's not retail, and they signed up to be in a retail center, right? And then a healthcare use shows up. But it's a great driver of traffic.
And it's
People
not,
in
it's
and
not
out all
what
day.
it used to be. I
It's
mean,
not.
the newer versions, and they're probably one of the larger utilizers of space these days in the city.
Since you're a premier broker, have a lot of these medical groups come to you and said, we
Absolutely.
want space?
They're looking around aggressively. There's 2 or 3 groups, CityMD in particular. They do a great job, and their facilities are really for they're certainly in the city. They're more white collar facilities. So you go in there if you sort of sprain your ankle, or if you want a flu shot or something like that. I mean, they really are not attracting sort of the clientele that I think the perception used to be. What those facilities bring in.
Yes.
And as Chris said,
since you alluded before of my age, they were called Medicaid centers. They were called Medicaid beds, okay?
They're walk-in clinics now, and they're great. They're great.
Right.
And the other thing that used to be true is they used to occupy too much parking for too long. But now they're more efficient. So you come in, you have your appointment, or you walk in, and you're out of there in 30 minutes as opposed to 3 hours.
Right.
So you don't have that conflict among the retailers.
You bring up a very interesting subject about parking and everything. In the
Parking, what's
suburbs,
that?
okay, no. Okay.
We don't have to worry about those
In the
issues.
suburbs, and I remember doing a show, and I think Eddie Blumenfeld was on it. We were talking about Lifetime Fitness, the guys out of Minneapolis who took over and built this 200,000 square foot facility, and the parking lots are busy at different hours because they're 24/7. Do you see that today? I mean, in the suburban area, we don't have that type of opportunity.
So we just replaced a vacant grocery store in Long Island with an LA Fitness, and we spent a lot of time deliberating whether that was the appropriate move for the property, and whether that was going to be the next great anchor tenant for that property, and what it was going to do to the parking. So they've only been open about 4 months, and so far it's been a booming success. And there is a lot of ebbing and flowing of the parking. So between 5 and 9 a.m., it's jammed. But a lot of the other stores aren't open yet.
That's exactly
And
right.
then it trickles along during the day, and then at night again, from between 4 and 7, it's jammed.
What about Blink? I noticed that Blink, which is a division of Equinox, recently opened up on 39th Street and 3rd Avenue. Do you see that as possibilities? Blink is the cheaper
Yeah,
Equinox.
no, I know Blink. Blink has spoken to us at the in a certain Staten Island project, and also the hub up in the Bronx that we're doing, which interesting. It's office and retail. It's two levels. Office on the top. The health industry has expressed interest in the top floor, and actually we're 50% rented to a health company, and we're hoping and expect that it will coordinate quite nicely. Blink has spoken to us there. They just think it's just a little bit off the corridor they want to be in. And at Staten Island, they came and looked, and they just, I think in that case, didn't want to pay the numbers that we needed, and that's
What
The
about
fitness companies have all, I think, come out with a lesser model, which I think is brilliant on their part, because I think the days of people spending $2,000-3,000 a year on health clubs, I don't think people want to do it as much as, now you pretty much, for the most part, many people go in, they work out, and they shower at home. And for that, you don't need to spend that kind of money. So offering these sort of lesser, you've got Blink, you've got Crunch, you've got Planet Fitness, you've got a few of these brands that are just at a lower price point. And I think it's a great idea on their part. Smaller space utilization, but
And they're very good for communities, right? And so you have companies like Equinox, which we think are very good. They're very smart. And so they run from, they'll take a 3,000 square foot format to do something like a Soul Cycle or their yoga concept, and all the way up to a 50,000 foot where they'll do a full scale Equinox. And
So
it's a great amenity
in
to
a
the
way,
building.
like Chris was saying, they're taking care of the Target Express. You know,
That's right.
There are different
range.
products for the different locations.
They also provide, to Richard's point, to the community. You know, we did a Planet Fitness deal in Canarsie, Brooklyn, and it was really interesting because that became, it's a $10 or $12 per month alternative to a social experience for a lot of folks, right? So they got a place to go to. They're working out, but they're also socializing. So it becomes more than just a health club. It becomes a community.
You know,
that
you
brings
bring up a
traffic.
very interesting because you did a great job building in Canarsie. You recently sold it to Cole. Do you see opportunities in non-traditional sections of the 5 boroughs? Like Canarsie was a different market over there. Do you see an opportunity perhaps in the Coney Island section of Brooklyn, or in, you know, other markets, right, you know, Related has done very well in the East New York section. Do you think there are opportunities over there?
Well, I think Lester and I are equally enthusiastic about the outer boroughs. We have a lot of investment there, so we better be right. But look, I think that to Lester's earlier point, the outer boroughs are so under-retailed. And to give you a statistic, in downtown Brooklyn, there's 23 square feet of retail per capita. And in the country, it's 55, so it's more than 2 times. And you'd see those same ratios or statistics throughout the boroughs.
Now, that's the boroughs.
Brooklyn in
But,
particular.
but since my shows air in Connecticut and New Jersey, what do you think about those markets, guys? Do you know what? Have you ever?
Do you know how to get there?
How do you get there, Jeff? You know,
That way.
There's all these bridges and tunnels. You can't believe it. So we bought 2 suburban properties, one in Nassau County on Long Island and one in northern New Jersey late last year. The communities just outside of New York, high density, high barrier to entry markets are spectacular. Rents are holding up, if not growing. There does seem to be a fairly bright line for where it drops off, though. So if you go too far east on Long Island,
can I see you?
it falls
Can I
right
see you go to Newark?
off. Perhaps.
Okay.
Perhaps. The rebirth of Newark is a real happening phenomenon. You know, I don't know how far it goes, but we would look at opportunities in Newark very, very carefully.
And what about Fort Lee? I mean, Fort Lee
Lee
has
is
been an area.
spectacular.
You think
I think Fort Lee is great. I think Fort Lee has a lot more runway.
that's very interesting because
You're not going to compete with me.
no,
I didn't say that.
no, because FortLee, the retailers have not done well, but there is a potential development that's going to take
Well, I don't
place
know
in
about
this.
that. I think the retailers have mixed results.
Mixed
But there's some
results.
very, very good results in Edgewater and
Edgewater
and in Fort Lee.
Edgewater, correct.
We just acquired a center in Freehold. We had come in and kind of as a white knight, paid down the debt on it for the current owner, made a joint venture deal with them, you know, and it has, there's interest. We just signed big lots, but it's not the numbers that were once there. It's that, you know, 40 miles outside the city, out of the gateway markets, and the rents fall off very, very substantially.
You bring up an interesting talk about the big lots, the 99-cent store, the dollar stores, which have done well, the Family Dollars, which are in the Bronx. Okay, you have them in the Bronx, and you have Dollar Tree and all that. How do you see those stores? I mean, are they?
Again, if we're talking out of boroughs, and if you look,
They can't be in Manhattan, but they can be in.
Right.
They can be in certain
if you
suburban
look at the
areas.
rest of the country, it appears that the high end and the low end have done okay. In New York, in the outer boroughs, the low end, the high end, the medium end, they're all doing well, and they're all looking.
You bring
And we don't have the internet issue in New York. We don't have as big of a risk.
Read
that-
Stolar's article on showrooming. You have the internet.
There is. There's certainly
You truly have
there's
the
an issue.
internet. People go to Best Buy to look at it and they
They
buy it on
absolutely do.
Certain items, yes, certain.
They do, but we don't have the kind of risk that you do out in the suburbs where you're driving 20 miles out to a showroom and you're going to just order online.
Right.
So we certainly have that. I mean, Borders was a tenant of ours, right? So Borders doesn't exist anymore. And, you know, Barnes & Noble isn't expanding the way they did. But you certainly have, there's more convenience retail right here. You have luxury retail. There's different kind of retail right here in New York.
Would you, as a landlord, take a bookstore today? How would you look at a bookstore.
Jeff, when's the last new bookstore deal you've
Yeah,
seen
right.
done?
Yeah,
So it's not a matter of would you take them as a tenant, because I don't
Are
think
they
they're
there?
expanding. The question is, would you buy a property where they are the tenant, and how would you view that on a long-term basis?
What about a game?
You'd certainly
The
take a
game-
Kindle
the
store.
The game stuff. A Kindle store is a different thing because it's the next generation. You know, I wrote some articles, and you've been on my panel, and 10 years ago, the top 10 retailers didn't exist. These are new entities which, came about. These are new things, True Religion Jeans and all these other situations.
The greatest success stories that we see for bricks and mortar versus internet or e-commerce experiences are those companies that embrace a strategy that utilizes both.
That's right.
I think the tenant that comes to mind most immediately is Staples. So Staples was, a traditional bricks and mortar success story. And as their business changed, they have changed. They're doing a very good job of downsizing their stores.
Yep.
They do a huge percentage of their business online, and they have embraced that dual platform, if you will, that is very, very successful. Other retailers are not embracing that or haven't been able to adapt quite so quickly, and they are struggling. Best Buy is a great example.
Agreed.
Absolutely. I think you have to pay attention to bricks and mortar and bricks and clicks.
Right.
Because, it's the way of the
Banks,
future.
banks. What about banks? I mean, you just bought a bank portfolio. What about, TD is like the world of New York. They want to open up more stores. They call not stores. They call
Branches.
them
They want to
stores.
open up
They
50
call-
more branches.
50 more stores. They don't call them branches. They call them stores. Who else? Do you see the other banks? Is Chase expanding or the other
They're
banks?
all back expanding again. I think there was a bit of a slowdown after 2008, but they are all back quietly. Yes.
And what about restaurants? Who are the? Oh, do we have locals? Do we have nationals coming here? I remember Morton's came into Brooklyn. They moved out of downtown Brooklyn. But do you see any more national retailers?
Tremendous amount of restaurants. The quick service. I mean, you look around and there's all these hamburger and sandwich places all coming in from out of town.
Five Guys is planning to put another 30, 40.
Five Guys and Fat Burger, and somebody else was just mentioned that
Smash Burger.
Smash Burger, and there's a bunch of the burger guys. There's all the sandwich guys coming in. There's there's just
There's
quick.
coffee, there's tea.
Right.
There's
More
people
coffee.
like, exactly.
And
Le
that you
Pan
can't buy on the
Quotidien.
internet. You can't buy a cup of coffee.
You
on the
cannot.
internet, so.
So who's the next great retailer that you'd like to see and that you see around that should be in their shopping centers?
I think what we're seeing a little bit now are some of the technology companies, and I really do think an Amazon, I do think a Microsoft, I do think, I was half kidding when I said Kindle, but I do see the companies, the larger technology companies, opening some showrooms and opening.
Microsoft opened up that pop-up store, the temporary one in Times Square. Do you see?
Absolutely.
They
will
have some
be-
stores.
No, they have
some
stores,
mall
but
stores.
they opened up these 11 or 12 stores. They were mostly
To promote the-
to promote
Yeah,
the
they
Surface
have
and
to.
all
They
that.
Windows
have to
8
open
and
up
Surface.
stores. I really think so. Samsung, companies like that, I do believe they're going to open stores as showrooms and.
Dell could be another one.
So
Dell,
as we
exactly.
start the new year, you're basically saying that my apples, which Richard and you are holding on the corner, are very bright, and the world of retail looks good, and New York City is under retailed, and if somebody wants to be in a retail, they should be in a retail property owned by these people over here. And I'd like to thank Chris, I'd like to thank Richard, Jeff, and Lester, and I'll be back next week.